Welcome to the Right Ingredients podcast, hosted by Aston Chambers, where we dive into recruitment trends, challenges, and solutions within the specialty ingredients industry. I'm Charlie Packwood, Managing Director of Aston Chambers, and today I'm joined by Bobby Westerman and Alex Gould. Today, we are focusing on the topic of retention. This topic has become a key challenge for businesses in our space. Companies invest significant time and resources into attracting top talent, but keeping them engaged long-term is a different challenge altogether. Today, we'll explore what really drives retention, the strategies companies are using, and the areas where businesses might be falling short. So before we get started, Alex, Bobby, would you like to give a quick introduction to yourselves?
Sure. Alex Gould, Head of U.S. Partnerships here with Aston Chambers. I've been with the group for about 6 months now, leading their North American interests. Happy to be here. And if you need any support in your hiring, your talent mapping, any kind of acquisition support, please feel free to reach out to any of us.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, I'm Bobby Westerman, and I lead our division for projects within the personal care space as well as the fragrance industry. I've been with the organisation now for over 5 years and work across both the US, Europe and other global locations, spanning its positions from commercial, technical and creative.
Thank you, Bobby. Well, thank you both for that. Right, let's get started. So to kick things off, what do you believe are the biggest factors influencing employee retention, specifically in our industry? Alex, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. I think retention in this market is all about 3 specific areas: purpose, progression, and people. Employees, whether they're in commercial roles, technical roles, they want to feel that their work has meaning. They want to have a clear path for growth, and they want to be surrounded by a strong team and strong leadership. For commercial teams, retention is really linked to having autonomy, right? Strong client relationships, clear sales incentives. On the technical side, maybe flavorists and perfumists and application scientists. It's more about innovation, having access to the right tools, the right resources, and feeling recognized for their experience. But I think across the board, if people don't see a future for themselves with an organization, they will start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, 100%. And I liked your flip there between, obviously there's different sort of retention factors when it comes to technical roles and the commercial type roles within our industry, something we'll come on to shortly as well. Bobby, did you have a point there?
Yeah, so kind of very similar to what Alex was saying, but to discuss a little bit more about how candidates, I think, then become disengaged within their organization and what influences them to stay is we all know about silent quitting, don't we, where people really disengage with their employer. But there's a new term that's come around recently called soft quitting. So, they're getting by, they're still engaged with their employer, but they're kind of disconnected from the role and from what the mission of the organization is. So kind of going back to then what Alex mentioned and that purpose within their role, I think especially in our industry that is driven on new developments, innovation, companies being quite visionary in what they're doing. If your team is engaged in that vision and you are really collaborating in teamwork, they're more inspired to stay. They're involved in the projects. They're inspired by the new innovations going on. And therefore they tend to be a lot more proactive, creative and involved in the company journey. And that is what I find is really kind of holding on and retaining staff at the moment.
Do you think that these factors, you mentioned sort of the soft quitting and the terminology that's been used there. I mean, do you think that these factors have shifted post-pandemic, particularly in terms of work-life balance, flexibility, remote working, working from home? Do you think that these sort of factors of retention have shifted?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those who have shifted to a work from home model or a hybrid model post-pandemic are retaining their staff if they are engaged in that project. Because at the moment then, there's nothing driving them to leave that organization because they're working strongly with their leadership. They're involved in the mission and growth of the organization. They have a purpose, to use that word again. And that has been a strong driving force. But with a shift, and you might have seen Alex and Charlie as well over the past kind of 6 to 8 months, let's say, some organizations are shifting back into less flexible working and wanting people to come back in the office. And with that loss of flexibility and that shift, this is a negative for some people if, again, they're not feeling as engaged in the organization. So, you know, with that soft quitting and silent quitting, if they're engaged in the organization, have that flexibility, it's a balance, right? There's nothing kind of driving them to leave that organization. But actually, if that organization starts taking things that they feel are a benefit, then that is when those factors shift, and that flexibility another organization can offer becomes a pull factor to them.
As you said, it's about creating that balance. That balance is the crucial word when we look at anything regarding retention. It's making sure that no matter what setup you have, remote, in office, hybrid, whatever it is, you've got to have that balance of being able to make sure that employees understand the vision, the growth, the plan of not just the company, but also senior management, also direct line managers as well, being able to communicate effectively to the different team members. This is exactly what we're doing. And I think, you've knocked the nail on the head there for sure.
Absolutely. I think pre-pandemic, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Alex. Go.
I was going to agree. I think pre-pandemic flexibility wasn't really a focus in the industry. Now it's the baseline, right? Especially for commercial teams that have a lot of travel. Remote and hybrid work options are becoming more common. But for technical roles, hands-on lab work still requires a physical presence, right? The challenge now is figuring out how to be flexible without sacrificing collaboration and innovation in the work environment.
For sure. It's very difficult for some of the positions that we recruit for, flavorists, perfumers, application technologists. It's very hard to have remote working for those individuals, but the innovation factor there is key because, as I said, it's going back no matter what position you have within the organization, making sure that they understand the vision of the company. So crucial, for sure. Okay. So moving on from there, a lot of companies assume salary is the biggest driver of retention. And that can be sort of a very big misconception within some companies that we work with. But it's not always that simple. So how do career development opportunities compare to compensation when it comes to keeping employees engaged?
Yeah. I think we can all agree that comp gets people in the door, but career development is what keeps them from leaving, right? Employees want to know, where do I go next? What skills do I need to get there? If the path isn't clear, they'll go to a competing company that has a similar or better offer. That being said, this is a very, very tight margined industry. Companies can't always outbid a larger player on salary, but they can invest in learning, in mentorship, in leadership programs and development. Things like that are what make a long-term difference in retention.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything Alex said there. And when it comes to that kind of engagement and really driving candidates' development within an organization, if they are disengaged and they are at a ceiling level of their role and they know that there is nowhere else for them to progress, those roles outside of the company with a higher, bigger compensation package start to become that little bit more attractive, don't they? So I think they start to be more open to having conversations where they really want to kind of make an impact and develop within their career. We have tons of conversations with candidates, and I speak with candidates and interview them all the time who are not actively looking because they have a career development opportunity internally. Their leadership is constantly speaking to them about where they're adding value, what that kind of 12-month, 18-month progression looks like. And that does stop them from looking for other positions. So I think it really takes then not only a strong compensation to pull them away, but an attractive offer in terms of responsibilities and other external development that other companies can offer because, you know, really people want to continue to be invested in. And as Alex touched on, investing in that learning and development as well. I think that's definitely is a pull factor to stay with your organization.
Having those career development opportunities marked out from the outset, so crucial, so key. Something I personally like to do is keep a spreadsheet of every candidate I've ever placed to monitor things like, are they still employed? How many years have they stayed with the organization? And specifically related to this question, have they been promoted since joining the company? For me, I find this really insightful to monitor career progression within certain companies. For example, if a candidate has been with the company 2 years, are they still in the same role? Why have they not been progressed into another role? Have they been there 5 years? Why have they not been progressed to another role? These sort of key questions are interesting for me to see. And more importantly, it's a great selling point when supporting the company again in the future also, that I can say from the 4 candidates, I've made the number up there, but from the 4 candidates that we've placed within this organization, 3 of them have been promoted within the space of 3 years. I mean, that is a really key selling point when approaching new individuals to show, hey, this is the role, but look at the career progression you can have within the company in such a short time.
Absolutely. As humans, right, we always want to be tried and tested outside of our comfort zone as well. But everyone likes a bit of security, don't they? So if they have a plan in place with an organization, and you can see, as you said, candidates you're placing within organizations, you know, have taken on a couple of new roles, new responsibilities in the time they've moved there, it's security. Moving jobs can cause all kind of questions, probation periods. Is it the right move? They have a family if it involves relocation. So keeping candidates engaged with a strong development plan and keeping them growing within an organization it is super crucial to keep them.
Quick answer from you both here. Don't have to go into sort of loads of detail, as it's just sort of I would say from my point of view, a quick yes or no. But do you think companies that you work within our industry, within our space, are doing enough to provide clear career pathways for candidates that you're recruiting for?
I think some are, but many are not. I think especially in these smaller to mid-size organizations, career progression can usually feel slightly undefined, right? I've seen companies that have lost great people simply because there's no internal mobility, no plan in place for them to progress their career. And if leadership isn't having regular career conversations with their employees, I do think they risk losing them.
Yeah. For me, I think that knocks the nail on the head there. For me, from my perspective, and sorry, I'm just going to jump in there, Bobby, and give my view, but I think it's more the small to medium-sized companies. Yes, they do. Yes, they give clear career progression. The big multinationals, they totally forget. It gets totally lost. And I fear that that's because within the big multinational organizations, the people that are recruiting said position don't really know their own career progression. And potentially that is why it's not being passed down the chain of command to what's the person that they're recruiting, what's their career progression. And I think that's where it falls apart. So from my perspective, within our industry, small to medium-sized companies, yeah, there's a lot of them that are very good out there in defining clear career progression. But the big multinationals, I think, do need to have a little bit more of a review of how they are retaining their talent by career progression and outlining that from the start.
You'd think it'd be slightly easier for larger organizations to do this because they have the people in place in these roles that are progressing into these other positions naturally. Yeah. So you'd think that they could have a career planning, a career mapping and pathways already listed out for each of these positions that they're hiring.
Yeah.
And maybe they do.
They just don't know, do they?
Well, maybe they do, but it's not from my perspective and maybe yours as well. But I just don't think that they are outlining this so clearly to candidates that are then joining their organization.
Do you think that because, you know, if we're talking about the larger organizations, the smaller ones being a bit more flexible, offering those career paths for people, the larger organizations are doing, we know, a lot of acquisitions at the moment. There has been a lot of restructuring of teams over the past 12 to 18 months with acquisitions. There have been a lot of job losses. So those kind of clear pathways that maybe employees once thought they had, all of a sudden are disappearing. And I think that could be something to do with it as well.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. When we look at the big mergers that have happened, mergers take time to sort of integrate companies. The role that was promised to you when you joined X company is now being taken by somebody that's been merged from another organization. So yeah, entirely. Okay. So moving on from there, from our perspective, I mean, every industry has its own set of retention challenges, but what makes our sector, the F&F specialty ingredient space, particularly challenging when it comes to keeping top talent?
I think the biggest challenge is the limited talent pool that's available. Specialized expertise typically means fewer available candidates for each of these roles, making retention that much more important. Unlike other industries where skills can be transferable within the organization or even outside the organization, employees in this sector often need deeper technical expertise, deeper knowledge. Career progression can also be a challenge, right? Especially in small companies. Like we just mentioned, offering clear development paths and cross-functional opportunities is what's going to keep people in those seats, in those offices.
Yeah. And I think with that kind of niche talent that we have and smaller talent pool, there's also a reluctantness from some companies, not all of them, but to be agile in this kind of environment, to keep that niche talent and that really experienced talent that, you know, is sometimes difficult to find at the moment in the industry. I think the F&F industry and ingredients is seeing a massive technology shift at the moment. We're being led by innovation, by sustainability, by AI, and talent is leaving companies because their teams are not being agile enough, where they have a senior leadership team that is working a little bit slower. Maybe demands of their customers cannot be met. So with competitors actually responding to these market demands, I think that is a specific challenge for these organizations to retain that good talent, because if they are really specialized, they are really experienced, have something to offer, they want to work for an organization that values that.
And in the last segment, when we were talking about the difference between the small to medium-sized companies and the larger multinational companies in terms of how they deal with career progression, do you feel that there is more competition from the big ingredient producers within our space taking away the best talent or top talent from mid-sized, smaller players?
I think 100% yes. I think the big houses can offer bigger salaries, larger budgets for R&D. They have global career opportunities. But then again, smaller firms have a slight advantage when it comes to entrepreneurial culture, agility and adaptability, like Bobby just mentioned, and having a much deeper impact in the work that they're doing. I think retaining talent often comes down to reinforcing what makes a company unique beyond just their financial incentives. But again, we know the salary gets them in the door. So those smaller firms really need to work on what makes them stand out.
I'm going to slightly disagree with Alex. I think, yes, the large players have the funds. They have the capabilities to launch new technological advancements, drive new R&D, but only from what I'm seeing in my industry, a little bit separate from Flavour, because of what we've just talked about, restructuring, acquisitions, a lot of the smaller organizations that I work with and the candidates that I speak with are quite attracted in going to a smaller mid-sized organization because of being, are we going to say, a bigger fish in a smaller pond? You know, they want to really make an impact in an organization. And because the large players are becoming so big, yes, there is an attraction with funds, with money. They may be able to offer bigger salaries, but I speak with people who are quite segmented in the large organizations. They're only looking after one category, let's say home care or just fine fragrance, and they want to broaden their responsibilities and work across a variety of categories, learn different regions, and the bigger players just can't offer that to them because there are so many different teams involved, which to some people offers a big benefit. But I think from a competition point of view at the moment, for me, a lot of people are looking to have broader responsibilities and excel. And that is what the smaller mid-sized organizations are offering.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. But I do think that finances and the financial stability of a company, what they can offer from resources and salary and package, there's a lot of merit behind what they can do and a lot of power with what they can do.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think both great points there in terms of that. I think both of you have a contrasting but similar insights when it boils down to sort of the real question there. I think what I'm also seeing as well from the larger companies is what I have dubbed, and I will call it the retention handcuffs. And I'm seeing it a lot within the big multinationals within our space. And what I mean by retention handcuffs is a lot of contracts are now coming with 12-month lockout periods for their most skilled individuals, especially, and I'm going back to the skilled individuals of senior flavorists, perfumers, those sort of positions. I will take on a senior flavorist, master flavorist position. I'll approach people within the industry and I'm getting an influx of responses saying, yeah, I'm interested, but just so you know, I have a 12-month notice period. And these big companies, they're willing to put that in the contract because they have the money, like you've mentioned, Alex, to be able to afford to have somebody out of the company not working for a period of 12 months. But it's not just to stop them going to a competitor. It's to put them off from going to a competitor in the first place. Because 9 times out of 10, candidates will come back to me and go, yeah, I'm interested, but I'm not going to proceed for this reason. Non-competes are, most of them, I'll be honest, from what I've understood from legal advice that I've undertaken in supporting candidates in the years, sometimes they're not really worth their weight of paper, but they're still there, and they're there to put candidates off from joining other companies simply because they feel that they can't. They're locked into these retention handcuffs.
A way to keep talent.
Yeah, for sure. Now, beyond salary and career progression, we've covered both of those aspects. Company culture plays a huge role in retention. We've mentioned it briefly before in terms of really understanding what the company is looking to achieve, the vision of the company. But culture is so important for any organization. So in your opinion, what defines a strong retention-focused culture in this industry?
Bob, you want me to take it? Or you want?
I'll go for this one first. I mean, very simply, a people first culture. Put your people in your workplace first. You know, people want to feel valued. They want to feel heard. And I think building quite an inclusive and diverse environment in which that can be done, encourage different perspectives, ask your employees for their thoughts, showcase success stories as well. I think this is really important in a practical way to really kind of make them feel valued. I've seen a lot recently of companies posting on LinkedIn a lot more about success stories or congratulating an employee within the organization. It seems a very small thing to do, but it's very practical and it's very public in terms of making those employees feel engaged. I think that can give quite a strong employer branding for people to look at. It can give them a strong reputation for attracting new talent. But to caveat that, it has to be sincere. It can't be Mr. Smith, 3 hierarchies up than you that's met you once doing that post. It has to be very sincere, and it has to be very, not planned, not scheduled, but really doing something quite surprisingly to make somebody feel quite valued in the organization.
Yeah,
I think exactly that. I think from what you're explaining there, I think that is perfect for the mid-sized companies within the marketplace, because they're the ones that have to create their culture. They have to let the world know what their culture is, which is a form of recruitment. It is pretty much letting the industry know this is the type of company that we are. This is what we stand for. This is what we support. Come join our company. The bigger organizations, it's a little bit harder to thank everybody. When you've got over 10, 15, 20,000 employees globally, a LinkedIn message saying so-and-so did a really good job with this project, it doesn't really sort of hit home the same amount. Or you just have your LinkedIn feeds completely taken up by all of these posts. Definitely, I think that is a huge way of communicating culture, communicating what your company stands for. But that's definitely a tick point for the small to medium size. Alex, what do you think could be a way of creating that for the bigger organizations that are out there?
Well, I think irrelevant to size, I think it comes down to 3 factors, right? Recognition, as both of you kind of alluded to already, making sure employees feel valuable, making sure they feel valued, whether it's top performing salesman or a lab worker, really identifying and giving that recognition where it's deserved. Second would be collaboration, creating an environment where commercial and technical teams work together. When they're not in silos, great things can happen. Lastly, innovation, giving people the freedom and the resources to experiment, to be able to grow within their roles, to understand and identify opportunities within their organization without having those handcuffs on that can limit them in their resources.
Yeah.
We've all seen as well on LinkedIn numerous sort of motivational quotes, and one that stands out here that I wanted to bring up was people don't leave roles, they leave leaders.
Yes.
That brings me on to sort of this question, which is how important is leadership, direct leadership, in driving or maintaining retention? And what are some of the common leadership mistakes that can then lead to high turnover?
Yeah, well, leadership is everything when it comes to retention. In that quote, I think says it perfectly. One of the biggest mistakes I see is not listening to employees when people feel unheard, undervalued, or stagnant, that's when they leave. Leaders need to be able to create an environment where employees feel comfortable voicing their concerns and their ideas without risk of, getting slapped on the wrist.
Yeah. I mean, a leader isn't just about managing a team, is it? Checking in on them, delegating them, what KPIs are you doing? Leading by example, being a positive mentor for your team. I think we all know we're in a bit of a culture now on emotional intelligence and giving people the space to listen and talk. And I think these create quite long-term commitment and, engagement when you have a really strong leader that does that and leads by example. Let's say they feel more valued and motivated. Alex mentioned, a couple of really key things there and mistakes. And I think if we go back to looking at now a hybrid model of how a lot of people work, micromanagement, a lack of trust now in that hybrid working environment, I think is also a really big thing that can kind of be a big mistake from a leader that would drive people to want to leave the organization.
Well, you touched on it perfectly there, Bobby. So let's put some more focus on it, as it seems to be a hot topic in every industry currently. And we've highlighted it throughout this conversation, but it's the shift towards remote and hybrid work. It has changed the way companies think about engagement. So how can businesses strike the right balance between offering flexibility, but while still maintaining a strong company culture?
I think it comes down to understanding your team's strengths and their work styles. When you're in an office, you can just walk up to somebody and ask them a question, and you can really kind of get a personable answer, and how somebody is in terms of their persona. You lose that when you're working remotely and hybridly. So I think it is all about how you communicate and how you collaborate as well. So you understand your team and somebody prefers a quick call to ask a question. Try and really make sure that you're valuing that. Some people like a detailed email and get everything written down before they want an answer. And I think as a good leader, sometimes you have to adapt to that to really make sure you still got that strong company and team culture, but really managing that flexibility that you're still communicating with your team and not micromanaging them and not communicating with them effectively as well.
Yeah, very well said. It's clearly a lot about having intentional flexibility, right? It's if a company just says we're flexible without those clear guidelines, it can create some disconnect. The most successful approaches that I've seen involve structured hybrid models, designating in-office days for collaboration, at the same time allowing remote work when it makes the most sense.
Yeah. Have you seen any successful approaches to hybrid work that your clients have implemented in terms of how they've set it out, what they expect? From your perspective, guys, any clients that you work with that you've seen some great examples?
Yeah, one example that I've seen is setting core collaboration hours. That's where everyone is available at the same time, regardless of location. This puts alignment between the teams while still allowing individuality and flexibility. Another approach is rotating lab or office-based collaboration days, so technical teams can maintain that engagement that they're looking for.
Great.
Yeah, I've seen that very similar as well. I think it's about giving employees their autonomy and that trust, but making sure that you're still feeling connected and supported to your team as well. So if you can get that balance right, you can really strengthen your culture. And I think, shifting a focus to working your core hours 9 to 5, for example, but actually monitoring and speaking to employees and trusting them to deliver results when they are available. That's a successful hybrid model. It's trusting them to deliver the results, giving them accountability and that sense of ownership as well. And I think that kind of approach as well has seen a lot of strong successes in the clients that I've been working with. Have you seen anything different?
I would have said, I think both I was going to lead on to what I'm thinking in my head. Do you think it's a generational thing in terms of the difference between those who are staunch, everybody should be in the office, 9 to 5, that sort of working environment, against those that are like, I'm not coming into the office, I'm never going into the office, I work from home, and that is my point on it. Do you think that is a generational thing? And Do you think we'll ever see an environment where it is 100% back in the office?
I think it's industry specific. I think it is generational. There are certain generations that prefer in office. I go against the grain. I think I enjoy working remote, but I do prefer in office work. I think that it's a more collaborative, more FaceTime, more opportunities to really get to know your teammates and grow with them. So yeah, I do at the end of the day believe generations have different expectations when it comes to hybrid, remote, or in-office work. That said, I do think that the industries can lead that a little more insightfully than the people behind them.
Yeah. I mean, I've not too much more to add on that. I think Alex hit the nail on the head as well. And there is that element of, a generational process. But I also think that companies need to realize, and what I think they are realizing as we go on, is that they can attract more talent with this hybrid working model, not because they're hybrid, but they can look broader rather than maybe just an hour commute away from the office in the talent that they are attracting. So I think it comes down to where we're seeing that flexibility. Yes, being a generational thing, and I'm really one with that hybrid working, but also I think about the talent that they can attract. We're speaking with clients and they're very hell bent on saying they need to come into the office 3 days a week. That is kind of what the rules are, but we can't find talent within that vicinity. It is about, encouraging them to look a little bit broader, because the talent that they could find could really add value to that organization. So that's a slight different shift from your question, but because I think Alex covered it, I think just kind of the benefits that it can offer is also quite strong.
Yeah. And I think to your point, is it worth losing great talent because of lifestyle challenges, right? The cost of living for everyone is going up. Childcare is going up, and these things matter. And if someone doesn't have the funds necessarily to pay for and cover some of these day-to-day expenses while working from home allows them that opportunity, and they're a great talent, why risk losing them?
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
It's a lot easier to change jobs. It's a lot easier I'm starting for a new company tomorrow. There's not really much change. If it's the same sort of position that you're doing, you're just changing what role you're doing into a new company. It's very sort of interchangeable. So I'm seeing people on LinkedIn that I know are 100% remote that are changing jobs every 2 years, because it's very easy to walk away from faces on a computer. It's a lot harder to walk away from company culture that you've invested in. You've been into the office, you know the people, you know everybody around you. You have that sort of relationship. So going back to retention here, being able to create that culture, that vision for your staff, for your employees in a remote environment is even more important. Company culture sort of creates itself when everybody's in the office, but when you're remotely based, you sort of feel a little bit disconnected from that company culture, from that company vision. So leaders, managers, directors need to make sure that they are, I wouldn't say pushing, but letting their employees know what the culture is, what the vision is, make sure they keep that sort of harness, that sort of real sort of understanding all the time for remote workers, to make sure that they do feel included, they do feel part of the company, they do feel part of the culture and part of the vision.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, so important.
Now, finally, retention starts the moment a new hire joins the company. Now, what do you think businesses should be doing in their onboarding process to set employees up for long-term success from the start?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question, I think, because onboarding historically has just been about information. Onboarding should be about integration, not just information, right? Too many companies overload new hires with technical details, but really forget to immerse them in the culture and the vision and the people. A great onboarding process helps new hires feel connected, valued, and prepared for what they're going to see in their, first 30, 60, 90 days with the company.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And even going before that, pre-boarding. So we deal with people that have long notice periods. They are waiting 3+ months sometimes before they start a new position, at times 6 months. And I think a lot goes into somebody leaving a company, handovers, leadership responsibilities, and those long notice periods. So I think it's really on to that new employer to keep that excitement alive through a bit of a pre-boarding process as well. So simple things like a welcome package, a personal note, regular check-ins before that onboarding and that start date happens to really make sure that they are set up for success and they feel that they've already been engaged with and they've not been forgotten about from offer to that first day in the employment. And I think from that, Alex, touched on everything perfectly, that, it really needs to be quite collaborative. I think team lunches, meeting people involved for a welcome coffee is a great way to kick things off, because you want to make sure that they feel valued from the very start of that new role.
You said that there in terms of especially candidates in Europe, Bobby, that will normally have a 3-month notice period. Different for you over there in the US, Alex, I know. But in Europe, the 3-month notice period, making sure that you keep them fully interested in your company and you start building from the start of those 3 months. I think a lot of companies can go, right, we've made the hire. We'll see you in 3 months. All the best with your resignation with your current company. Let us know how it goes. And there's not that sort of real sort of development and building from the hire onwards. I think what I saw recently from a smaller organization within our space and I thought that's a fantastic idea, was they made the hire and then they said, listen, do you have any holiday days left within your notice period? We have 3 exhibitions coming up that we would like you to attend. We'll pay for your flights. We'll pay for your hotel. We understand that you're going to have to take time off work, but you could use holidays for those days. So we'll pay for you to come to these exhibitions. Just come join our stands. You're not going to be selling. You're not going to be speaking to customers, but you're just going to be there. You're going to be able to meet the team. You're going to be able to hear how we sell. You're going to be able to understand our products. And I thought that was just such a great idea, because that candidate hasn't even started in the position, but she's already being brought along to exhibitions to really understand the company culture from day one of the hire.
Yeah, I think that's incredible to see how they interact with their customers. Hopefully their employer isn't at that same exhibition.
No, I don't think they are.
No, I think that's an incredible way to do it, because you're really getting them involved in how you kind of, speak to your customer base and work together. And I think, starting a new job is scary. You have to meet new people. Yes, a lot of people are very confident, but knowing and having met people or interacted with them before that first day, takes a little bit of that away.
Yeah. I also think a lot of companies focus too much on the pain points. And what I mean by the pain point is the position the person is being interviewed for. Functionally, that's why they're making the hire. The role, someone has left the position, the role has been newly created, whatever it is. For the direct line manager, that's their focus, is finding somebody suitable for that position, the pain point as such. Companies need to look beyond the candidate's first step into the company. I think a lot of companies need to think, they look at the bigger picture. They should be thinking already, right, could this person grow into a management leadership function or even further within the company? And what does that look like? How can I communicate that to the person that I am recruiting? What is their growth projection? We've spoken about this earlier on in this conversation today, but not focusing too much on the pain point, but looking at the bigger picture. I think that's crucial for making sure that you're, from the onboarding process, you're being clear, you're being concise to the vision and the development and growth of that individual joining your organization. Because I think a lot of companies do go wrong when it comes to onboarding. So some tips that we've mentioned today, hopefully they'll be more widely implemented.
Yeah, absolutely agreed.
Any further points from you, Alex?
No, I think you hit it right on the head there. Well said.
Good.
Yeah. And I think just, a final quick point, I think sums up what you just said, Charlie, but onboarding doesn't stop after week 1. I think organizations think of onboarding and it's okay, what are we doing in their first day? What are we doing in their first week? As Alex touched on, the administrative side of things. Okay, you've got your laptop, you've got your desk, you're set up to work, you know what the job should be, XYZ, here's the pain points, for example. But what happens after that? I think that regular check-in, really keeping themselves engaged. I think it goes through the whole, first month. Again, Alex mentioned it, 30, 60, 90 days. A lot of our organizations we work with have probation periods. Yes, those probation periods are in place to assess that employee, but also it's a probation period almost sometimes for the employee to the new company. You know, how have they been integrated into the team effectively? How have they really seen their progression in those first 3 months? Because a lot of the roles we recruit for are so complex across commercial, across technical, creative. It's not a simple 1 week tick box. You're in the company now, go for it. I think there needs to be a lot more collaboration and kind of onboarding in place.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well,
Perfect.
thank you, Bobby. I think that finishes us up nicely for today. I think it's been a really insightful discussion on the topic of retention in a variety of different spaces. And it's clear that retaining top talent isn't just about offering the highest salary. I think from what we've discussed, it's about building a strong culture, providing career growth opportunities, and making employees, remote or in office, feel genuinely valued. So thanks again to Bobby and Alex for sharing their insights. Now, if you found this discussion useful, please make sure to subscribe and share it with your network. And of course, if there's a topic you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please reach out and let us know. So until next time, thank you for listening to the Right Ingredients podcast hosted by us, the team here at Aston Chambers. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.